Alisson Cambier was 15 years old and lived with her family in Gurpins, a town located in Belgium. Gurpins is a small town, considered very safe and quiet. Some Belgians even say it's one of the best places to raise a family. Alisson was described as a cheerful, polite girl who enjoyed sports a lot. She was well known and liked in her neighborhood, as she offered babysitting services to nearby families, who always praised her work. Despite her young age, it is said that Alisson was very responsible and wanted to start working early to earn her own money. On weekends, she would go horseback riding with her friends, her favorite sport. In the same neighborhood where Alisson lived, just 2 houses down, resided a 24-year-old young man named Thierry Jaradin. According to sources, Thierry was a lonely young man from a dysfunctional family. When he was little, his mother, an alcoholic, abandoned him, and he was raised by his father, a man who was extremely violent. Later, just like his mother, his father also abandoned him, and he was then raised by his grandmother, an 84-year-old woman at that time, who was his only remaining family. Despite the 9-year age difference, Alisson and Thierry were friends and would exchange VHS tapes. Sometimes, they even watched movies together. For Alisson, this relationship was simply friendship, but for Thierry, a young man described as lonely and in need of affection, it meant something more. On November 9, 2001, around 8 p.m., Thierry called Alisson's house and told her he had new tapes to exchange. As usual, he invited her over to his house to watch the movies. Alisson asked her parents for permission to go to the young man's house, and they allowed it since they had known Thierry for a long time and always thought he was a good person. That night, around 8:45 p.m., Alisson went to Thierry's house as planned. Upon arrival, the young man led her to the room where he kept his tapes. But the real reason for inviting her that night was to confess his love and ask her to be his girlfriend. In Thierry's mind, Alisson had already been his girlfriend for some time, and this was the moment he had gathered the courage to make it official. However, when he confessed his feelings, she rejected him, telling him she only wanted to be friends. This caused him great frustration, as he believed Alisson saw him as more than just a friend. Thierry then went to his room next door, put on a black robe, a white mask, and grabbed 2 40-centimeter knives he had already prepared. All of this was inspired by the movie Scream, and he had planned everything days before. Leaving the room, he ran towards Alisson, covered her mouth so she couldn't scream, and stabbed her about 30 times. Alisson died instantly. After taking her life, Thierry placed her body on the bed with a red rose in her hands. A few minutes later, Thierry called his father and a friend to confess what he had done. To his friend, Thierry said that Alisson did not get scared or react, as they had watched the Scream movies together, and she thought it was all a prank. Afterwards, the young man left his house to go to his friend's place, leaving a flashing blue light on the headboard of his bed along with music, referencing a scene from Scream. When Alisson's parents noticed she was taking a long time to come home, they decided to go to Thierry's house. Upon arriving, they knocked on the door several times, and when there was no response, they decided to enter and found their daughter already lifeless on the young man's bed. Alisson's father called emergency services and pleaded for help, but the operator informed him that, due to the nature of the crime, they would need to wait for the police to arrive before sending an ambulance, as the perpetrator could still be nearby and pose a risk to the rescue team. Shortly after, the police and the ambulance arrived at the scene. While the police conducted searches in the area to find Thierry, paramedics attempted to provide first aid to Alisson, but unfortunately there was nothing they could do. Thierry was located and arrested at his friend's house a few hours later. During a search of his home, the police found several horror movie tapes, a collection so extensive that he could have opened a video rental store if he wanted. Additionally, they found receipts for purchases made 10 days before the costume and the knives used to kill Alisson. For the police, this indicated that the crime was premeditated, which was confirmed after officers found the young man's journal. In this journal, Thierry wrote that if Alisson refused to be his girlfriend, he would put on the costume he bought and end her life. He also wrote that dressing up, including wearing the mask, would prevent Alisson from looking directly at his face and thus not associating what was happening to her with him. Regarding this, one of the detectives involved in the case said that the young man had a split personality, as he had feelings for her but did not hesitate to harm her. While in custody at the police department, Thierry confessed everything and described in detail what he had done to Alisson. emphasizing that he had planned it all days in advance. According to him, the rose placed on the young woman's body was saved for if she accepted his proposal, but if she refused, he would kill her, which is exactly what happened. Thierry also said he could not accept being abandoned again. The detectives who conducted his interrogation said that when they saw the crime scene and the young man's journal, they expected him to be extremely aggressive. However, they mentioned that throughout the interrogation, Thierry was very polite, kind, and sometimes a bit introverted. At no point did he deny the crime, and he cooperated with the police at all times. On May 26, 2003, more than a year after the crime, Thierry Girardin's trial began. The prosecution argued that the accused was extremely cold and calculating. They also argued that Thierry had a perverse side, committing the crime inspired by a movie fantasy, and that there was a high likelihood he would do it again if released. The man underwent a mental evaluation to determine if he had any disorders, but according to the psychiatrist who assessed him, he was completely sane and fully aware of his actions. Thierry's trial did not last long, and after the jury's deliberation, he was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. After the crime, the case gained significant attention throughout Belgium, with some newspapers speculating that Alisson and Thierry had a secret romance that her parents were unaware of, and that after she tried to end the relationship, the young man could not accept it and killed her. These allegations enraged the young woman's family, as the media was peddling a fictional romantic story just to profit from it. Thus, Alisson's father went to one of the country's most famous newspapers and made a statement saying that journalists were exploiting the tragedy and that his daughter had never been romantically involved with the criminal. The media also sensationalized the crime, linking it to the Scream trilogy and suggesting that the movies had influenced Thierry to commit the act. These reports gained so much traction that there was later consideration of banning the movie in the country. Because of all this, the crime committed by Thierry became known in Belgium as Scream. In 2015, 14 years after the crime, Thierry applied for parole before the Brussels court. His lawyer argued that he had never had issues with the authorities or behavioral problems before the crime. The lawyer also claimed that Thierry had no criminal record or history of psychiatric issues prior to the crime. Despite these arguments, the parole request was denied by the Brussels court. In 2020, Thierry submitted a new parole application, but the process has yet to be reviewed. As of now, Thierry Girardin continues to serve his sentence at Ytre prison. Well, I know this video is a bit short, but that's because there's limited information available about this case online. Still, I felt it was important to share this story with you. So, what do you think about this case? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like the video to support the channel. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.